And good evening, and welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And for those of you who are here for the first time, this is not the best time to subscribe. I am, again, let me reintroduce myself. I'm James Donnelly. This is the Shadow Gallery. It's time for a very abbreviated edition of New Comics, bitches! I'm really sick. But I promised you guys that I'd fight through this, so, or not that I'd put something up tonight. So, really, what I'm going to be talking about tonight is literally the best I can do right now. It's the best thoughts that I can formulate. I'm not even going to go through a whole rundown of everything that I picked up, this last week, but just really kind of talk about what I consider to be the best and the worst books of last week. So, both of the bad books belong to. I'll just give you a general overview. Some of the really good books that I read. The two Ultimates books that came out last week, The Ultimates number 15 and Ultimate Spider-Man number 15. I think they're both number 15. It's more of the Divided We Fall stuff. Essentially, if you've been living under a rock in the comic book community, you already know this. But next issue of the Ultimates will be basically Captain America has won the presidency of the United States. And in this issue, we get to see why he wins. Because basically he goes, you've got, the Secretary of Energy, this Howard guy, that desperately wants to keep his job because ever since, he's been appointed, in the, I can never, those of you who are, like social studies experts or whatever, I can never remember the term for the line of power that kind of goes down to whoever's next in line for the presidency. If something like obviously what happened in the Ultimates were to happen, where most of the cabinet and of course the president and the vice president are killed. But he's trying to keep his job. He wants to stay president, even though, and this is where it unfortunately does have this weird kind of tonal shift for this character, is that he seems to be wanting to do the right thing, doesn't really seem to care too much about being president, he doesn't even want to be president, but now he's desperate to remain president. But the long and the short of it is that it basically gives Cap an order to not enter into California, because California people are just getting decimated. Because they have the Mr. Merez, who's just who vanishes one place and comes somewhere else. He's given them this technology based on kind of this wasp technology, and they're just these big, huge flying wasps that just kill everybody that's trying to either get in or get out of California. And the kind of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs-esque characters that are kind of financing this whole thing, it's all, they're the ones who kind of not thought of it, but they're the ones that Merez came to. And now, of course, they're stuck holding the bag. So basically, Cap receives a presidential order to not enter California. And basically, he just gets tired of the bureaucracy of it. He gets tired of not being able to help other people, to help other Americans. And so he basically charges into and ignoring the presidential order. And he's shown kicking inordinate ass all over TV, and basically he becomes, on a write-in ballot, he becomes president of the United States because of everything that he's just done. It's a cool idea. Obviously, they played around with it in the What If universe of Marvel a long time ago, when What If comics actually used to exist, which is something I wish they would bring back. But I kind of liked at least the idea of like Brian Bendis doing What If comics, because at least you had usually a good writer-artist team. But one of the problems that What If usually had is that it had kind of a piss-poor writer-artist team. These kind of like third or fourth tier, no-name people behind it. So, but anyway, so it's a fun idea to play with the idea of Captain America actually being president of the United States. But how it's all going to turn out, obviously we don't know. But it was still a fun read. Ultimate Spider-Man was also a fun read, good read. Again, David Marquez just doing absolutely amazing work art-wise. That was a really good and fun read, because basically you have former SHIELD agent Maria Hill. She's now a cop. She comes to the Morales place to ask questions about Aaron, good old Uncle Aaron's death, and basically confirms to Miles that that Spider-Man did not kill him, that he died because of a reaction from his own suit. Basically, his own suit killed him. And of course, now he's got the web shooters. He's kind of trying to figure out how to work them and everything like that. Genki is quickly becoming like one of my favorite supporting characters in comics right now, because he's such a he's so enthusiastic about his friends, his abilities, and that he knows the secret and everything like that. And basically it ends with school is being basically their charter school, the charter school that he goes to is basically being let out so that the kids can go be with their families, because of the country's in chaos, obviously. And so he goes to the helicarrier and basically tells Cap that he wants to sign up. He wants to be one of the Ultimates. The only thing that kind of is starting to get at me about Ultimate Spider-Man, while it's always a good read, is that there doesn't seem to be that much of a distinction between the voice of the character of Peter Parker and the voice of that of Miles Morales. Obviously they're two very separate characters, but their kind of superhero antics, if you will, are very similar in rhythm and in speech. So that does kind of bother me that they didn't make this guy a little bit more non-Peter Parker-ish, but it's still it's enough of a welcome and familiar character that it's okay. It would, because for instance, like if Kane took over as Spider-Man and Dan Slott's run on Spider-Man, it would be a disaster. It'd be an interesting disaster, but it would be a disaster all the same. So, you do have to kind of keep that same quality of fun in a Spider-Man title. So that was, again, a good read. Spider-Man number 5. Another really good read. Basically, it's all about basically getting the final confrontation between the Spider-Men and Mysterio, and it's much less about the action beats as it is about the character beats, and which is really where the the comic has been most successful is with dealing with character. And that's why Spider-Man has been, I think, a really, after its first issue, has been a tremendous success because it has dealt much more with character than it has with action. The action is very secondary to what is actually going on within the the arc of the characters, and just some of the final words that Peter and Miles exchange with each other before Peter goes back. And and there's I won't spoil it, but if you haven't read it, there's a nice big question mark at the end of this issue once Peter does get back, which is kind of fun. It does lay the groundwork for maybe some different events going on in the 616 universe. Maybe again, it might just be kind of a just a weird little thing. Batwoman. Okay, so Batwoman #0, really terrific read. It was really nice to see, kind of see J.H. Williams kind of change up his style a little bit here, because like the pages where Kate is Batwoman are very they're laid out in the very kind of traditional, strange and unusual way that J.H. Williams would present it. But the other pages, the pages where it's dealing with her very much in the past, and her childhood and so on and so forth, is very much it's less inked. It's a lot more penciled. And it has a more kind of very traditional panel structure than you would see from a normal J.H. Williams page. But one way or the other, it's lovely. And it's a really terrific tale as well, because just seeing basically how Kate would the reason that she becomes Batwoman, seeing into her past, seeing okay, well, this is why she was kicked out of West Point, and dealing with her sister, and kind of the revelation of that, and her father, of course, and the training that she went through in order to become Batwoman, and then ultimately discovering that there's a line that you don't cross, and and that's what. It was a really well told story with some of course traditionally beautiful art from Williams, and it's definitely I think of this week anyway, definitely the highlight of the 0 issues. What else? See, I'm totally ill prepared for this because but I said that I'd do it, so here I am. I'm doing it. Well, okay. Let's talk about the really bad books, and then we'll get to the really good ones. Both the bad books come from DC, and both of them are 0 issues. And they are, the first one I'll talk about is Justice League 0. I picked it up really just to read it. I just, I was at the comic store. I was curious to see where Jeff Johns would go with this. There is one kind of shining moment of this tale, of this issue, I should say, but it has nothing to do with the A story. In fact, everything about the A story in regards to the character of Shazam is really like awful times 12. It is just really, really terrible. It has Gary Frank on art, who of course did Batman Earth 1 with Johns, which was a terrible book. Which one of like the biggest failures of recent memory, as far as okay, here's an opportunity to really, go somewhere with, go in kind of a different direction. with a character that is as well known and as beloved as Batman, and just Jeff Johns just squandered literally like every opportunity that he had. It just felt like he just, like, Jeff Johns just kind of squatted down and took a great big dump all over Shazam's and Billy Batson's personality. Okay, yeah, let's bring him out of the out of the 40s, or out of the Fawcett comics. The kind of ideal of the orphan, but the good, the very big-hearted young child, and basically let's make him grittier, and not so good and not so pure. So it's basically he's extracted all of the fun out of the character of Captain Marvel, everything that kind of makes him fun and cool and unique, and just fucks with it because he can, because he's Jeff Johns, and because no one will question him, because Justice League is still a huge seller. It's the biggest seller I think that DC has, and he's writing 3 different books, soon to be 4. Well, no, actually, no. Somebody else is going to be somebody else is going to be taking over Justice League. I can't remember who it is, but I honestly don't care. It certainly can't get worse, because this issue is just another example of just how Jeff Johns is just like, okay, well, I don't really know which direction I want to go in with this character, so I'm just going to basically, just do it my own way that has nothing to do, or very little to do, with previous incarnations, because it's my New 52, it's my sandbox, I get to play with it however I want. But unfortunately, Jeff Johns' sandbox, more often than not, for him, turns into a litter box. It's pathetic. It's just a terrible thing that he does. But the interesting thing, though, that did happen in this issue, not that I particularly cared for the way that it was set up. And this had art, I think that was Ethan Van Sciver who did the art for the B story, which is the reintroduction of the Question into the New 52. Now, whether or not this will actually spring forth his own series at some point in time, as far as if whatever the next kind of wave of New 52 titles, depending on which gets canceled, because they've committed to only doing 52 titles, which I think is actually untrue. I think there's more than 52, but regardless, there's it's just I did at least respect the fact that they are kind of, I don't know if it's going to be Vic Sage. I don't know what they're planning on doing here, but whatever. I don't remember who it was. I think it's one of you out there who put up this great graphic of the New 52 in the style of the Days of Future Past cover, the cover of that first issue of the X-Men Days of Future Past, where it has all of the all the characters that have either been retconned or have been ignored from the New 52. They've just been pushed aside from the New 52. And it was really cleverly done. I don't know what artist did it, and I can't remember who put it up on Twitter, but it was really good. Very clever. Very well done. And then, but the worst offense was from the thing that, of course, that I had the biggest hopes for. Because of all of the New 52 titles, really, especially for the female characters, you really have only one writer who is female that's doing a female comic, and that's Gail Simone doing Batgirl. But I was really hopeful when they got Ann Nocenti to come back to basically start writing Catwoman. Because I said to myself, okay, well, this is good. We have a female writer doing a female character. That should be a good thing, right? I mean, that, should, instead of Judd Winnick You know, it has, you know, it'll have maybe a different dynamic going with it. It'll have, you know, a better voice for our lead character. But I read an interview, or at least an excerpt from an interview recently. I don't remember on which website, in which Anna Senti said that she really kind of admired the origin story that was told of Catwoman in the films, or in the film. And unfortunately, it's not The Dark Knight Rises. The film that she is actually referring to is the origin of Catwoman in Tim Burton's Batman Returns, which of course is like one of the worst comic book films ever made. It's not as offensive as the original Batman, but it's pretty fucking close. But it literally took part of the same idea. It's ripped out everything again. You know, year one, obviously, you know, as we've gone over last week with Batman Zero Issue, is no longer canon. So none of that ever happened in this universe, in this New 52 universe, which then would lead to erase the fact that Selina Kyle was once a sex worker. And so, I mean, there's never really been a hint of that in the New 52 anyway. But, you know, clearly she's damaged. But why is she damaged? So basically what Nocenti has done with this one issue is take everything that was kind of cool about Catwoman, that she made her own choices, that, you know, that essentially she chose to do some of the things that she did in her own life, despite the fact that, you know, eventually she came to the realization that she was doing the wrong things and that her expertise lay elsewhere. So, of course, you know, we basically have little flashes of her as a child, as an orphan child, growing up in an orphanage, where basically it's like a Oliver Twist-esque orphanage, you know, but it's, instead of it being run by, you know, these kind of, you know, malevolent, you know, older, you know, almost plutocrats, it's being run essentially, you know, it's like if Fagin ran the orphanage in Oliver Twist. So basically, she's being sent out to steal in her orphanage home. So that's where she learns the tools of her trade. But, you know, eventually she breaks into this one place, gets roughed up a little bit, gets thrown out, and then meets this person from the Second Chance organization in Gotham City, who sets her up with a job, pretty good job. And then, you know, a year goes by, and she starts wanting to find out about her past. And this is like a municipal job that she has in Gotham City. But she wants to find out about her past. She wants to find out about her parents, so on and so forth. She kind of hacks her way, or has someone else helping her kind of hack their way into who she, you know, into finding out who she really is. And it turns out that her name isn't Selina Kyle at all. It's actually something in Russian. Perhaps. And then this mysterious character who kind of gave her the job with the whole Second Chance organization and everything like that, he basically tells her that you can't look into this anymore. And then she says, why not? And he pushes her off of a balcony, and she, you know, falls through. Literally, it's the same fucking thing as in Batman Returns. You know, she falls through the, you know, the little canopies and everything like that, and she lands on the ground. She's dying. Cats surround her en masse, and she and they lick her to life. So we are back to her having the idea of having 9 lives. It's literal now. They've stripped, you know, so Ann Nocenti, you know, who did some really interesting kind of well, not necessarily high concept, but some really kind of far out there stuff with Daredevil in the 80s. You know, like, you know, as far as, you know, some of, like, you know, the creation of Blackheart, you know, the whole kind of war with Mephisto and everything like that. And, you know, it's some really, really, really compelling and interesting stuff that she did with John Romita Jr., who is kind of not necessarily the apex of his career, but certainly some of his best work came out of that run on Daredevil, and, you know, some of the years that he spent doing the X-Men. So she has actually taken us back to 1992 when fucking Batman Returns came out, and given us an origin story that is more in line with what the delusional fucking ravings of a mind like Sam Hamm or Tim Burton would have, as far as, okay, well, this is how we should create Catwoman. I mean, it was literally like, the whole fucking book is the equivalent of a facepalm. It's just like, I cannot believe that somebody in their right mind, who's been writing comics for a long time and doing some really quality work on comics for a long time, comes to Catwoman, and the first idea that they have is, yes, let's turn her into the Catwoman from Batman Returns. And there are glimpses of that origin continuing through the narrative of this book, where she's attacking a security guard. She doesn't know why. She's all confused. She doesn't know what's going on. It was like reading one of my own nightmares, and not one of the good kinds that's kind of cool when you wake up and you're like, God, that fucking scared the shit out of me. Man, it was really creative and imaginative, and I wouldn't want to be in that world again. But you know what I'm talking about. You know, it's just, I mean, it's like if you were to read a comic book about, okay, this is one of your the dreams where you know, the nightmares where you are late for a test, you have no clothes on below the waist, and everybody notices except you know, that kind of shit. That's kind of what this was. It was like one of, you know, because that was one of the things that I at least, you know, liked about the fact that none of these films ever carried over into the comic book world. They stood alone from comic book canon. And so we have Ann Nocenti introducing Catwoman's Batman Returns origin into the canon of her existence in the New 52. This is literally a 0 out of 5, because not only it has no redeeming qualities on paper, as far as it being a good book, as far as the writing is concerned, it's all off. I don't hate it just because of the origin. It's a very poorly written book. It's very hacky. The art, I can't remember who the artist was, but it was absolute garbage. It was like they took, like, okay, Guillaume March, he's a very cheesecakey, the crazy eyes artist, you know, and I don't mind it so much, you know, he does know how to draw a really dynamic page of comics, but whatever artist they got to do this was literally, it was like, okay, this was like a last-minute replacement. They couldn't find anybody else, so yeah, let's go ahead and get this person, because apparently they can just draw kind of what I'm going to ask them to draw. It has no style, it has no flair, it has no substance, it has nothing. It has 0 redeeming value as a comic book. This is the worst issue of comics I have read all year, and that includes everything that's come from Avengers versus X-Men. It is the shittiest comic of the year. I am crapping you negative. This is just an incredibly barren wasteland of creativity. There's nothing there. There's nothing interesting. There's nothing compelling. There's nothing worthwhile to look at. It is everything that a comic book. This should be taught in classes. If you're going to a school for, or if you're being, if you're trying to learn how to write comic books, this should be in every, if they taught a class on that, this should be in the curriculum. This is not how you do an issue of comics. It's absolutely not. Everything is wrong. Everything is wrong with this issue. So, wow, that took a lot out of me. Wow, okay. I'm starting to look like Eraserhead too. It's not good. The good stuff. Let's move on to the good stuff. My kind of second from the top pick of the week, my runner-up for pick of the week, was The Shadow #5. I'm glad this is getting back up there. Still, it's, here's the thing, is that Garth Ennis's take on The Shadow, it's very different from any Shadow really that we've seen before. It does hold with, of course, some of the canon of the Shadow and his, and his abilities and his kind of ruthlessness, and that's very, very evident. But basically, what Garth Ennis is doing is, and I can appreciate this completely, is that he's taken his own particular kind of fetish, if you will, as far as writing comics is concerned, and that's not the fetish of like kind of really putting a lot of sex and violence into a comic book. That's his other fetish, but his other big fetish is war and tales of war and historical war events, particularly of World War II, because obviously this is something he knows a great deal about. He's written some incredibly incredibly well-crafted war stories. He's even had Garth Ennis's war stories. So, I don't have a problem with him doing war stories, but the fact that it's kind of crossing over into a book that is more about an urban Avenger gets a little unsettling, but I can appreciate, at least in this arc, where he's going with this, and where he's kind of taking this character. He's taking him out of New York City and putting him into the world. He's basically saying there is this evil that is rising within the world, and all evil, not just here in New York City, must be punished. And, so basically we have it's kind of an anticlimactic issue, but there is, of course, this awesome scene with Buffalo Wong and the Shadow. And it really is, it kind of encapsulates everything that is awesome about the Shadow. The only thing missing, really, is, of course, his laugh. But there's a good reason for that. He can't really laugh because this is, of course, this meeting is done in a very clandestine fashion. So he can't kind of let that loose. But just, all of the Shadow beats are really incredible. So I guess, my issue with this book is not so much that, and just with Garth Ennis's run on the Shadow in general, but his ideas about where the because he's doing the character really, really well. The art by Aaron Campbell is actually getting better, I think. There's one page in particular which is just extra dynamic. It's a really beautiful page of comics. And there's a couple of pages like that within this issue. we get the kind of the just we see really the true ineptitude of Agent Finnegan, that this is really someone who should not be leading anything other than himself, because he ultimately is responsible for a lot of deaths. But the question is whether or not those deaths could have been avoided anyway. Does leave for some debate that, okay, well, he's incompetent, but he's not, grossly incompetent. It kind of could, you can kind of make an argument one way or the other, but the bottom line is that despite Garth Ennis's very his very extensive, expansive knowledge of the tales of war and so on and so forth, he is able to fit that into not the mythology of the character necessarily, but he is able to put a very well-known, very beloved pulp character into this environment and have it be still a compelling story. And it always helps. Garth Ennis, he does have problems from time to time because he tends to get into these very, very exposition-heavy, laden books where there's a lot of talking, there's very little character development. It's just a lot of talking about events. Because that was something that, I've seen a lot more lately in The Boys. I've seen a little bit here in The Shadow, not this issue, but I think it was the last issue that seemed very, very exposition heavy. And but like stuff like Preacher, that never happened. Every time there was a moment of exposition, it actually was something that furthered the character along. So and I've been thinking a lot about Preacher lately. Not because I'm rereading it, surprisingly enough. I'm actually kind of like taking a couple months off of rereading Preacher, like from beginning to end, just because I don't want to, I don't want any of that magic to get lost on me. But because Preacher's just such an amazing book, I still have some problems with the final issue. And those of you who have read it know probably what I'm talking about. You might have had similar issues yourself with the final issue, but it does have probably one of the greatest single moments of the book in its entire run. And again, those of you who have read it will probably know what I'm talking about. So moving on to the pick of the week here. And again, it belongs to the team of Mark Waid and Chris Samney, and that is with the latest issue of Daredevil. I have none of this written down. I'm just going off of memory at this point in time because I'm really tired. I'm really tired. I'm really sick, and I'm just trying to get through this for you. So basically, we have something really fucked up is going on here. And it's killing me, because those of you who've read, I don't really want to spoil a lot of this issue, because if you haven't read it yet, there's some really, really important stuff that happens here. Because basically what we have is, we have the, okay, and I'm beginning to agree a little bit with Mark here, with Ghost Critic. Is that Foggy seems to be kind of acting a little bit too dickish, even to the guy that comes in the office, because basically, this poor guy, he walks in, basically his sister is being accused of murdering a crime lord, a gangster, whatever you want to call it. The body's completely drained of blood. But it was only, she was his nurse. It was only her and this guy in the room. The room was locked down. She had no idea how this happened, so naturally she is the one being accused of this murder. And since since Nelson and Murdoch are not really practicing law at this point in time, they are more consultants. So we actually are coming back to that aspect of things that was really kind of introduced in the first, in the first couple issues of Daredevil. The idea of them being consultants rather than actual attorneys. To teach someone how to defend themselves, or defend, to get the proper defense to defend themselves in court. In this case, it's the man, it's the girl's brother that is kind of pleading for, that wants to basically plead for her life, and they've got, basically a bought and paid for public defender. As far as the mob is concerned, the syndicate is concerned. And Foggy knows all this, and he also, he still is very, very, very nonplussed with Matt, but he still, of course, is compelled to help this guy because he does, because he has learned things from Matt over time, and one of those things is how to spot a liar, and this young man is not a liar. And so he's going to help, he's going to help this young man. But much different and much more frightening things are happening in the life of Matt Murdock. He's getting home from a date, sort of, not really a date, with Kirsty McDuffie, and has to cut it very short when they reach his door, because this would normally be the, this would be the sex time for Matt Murdock, because, if there's anybody who knows how to seal the deal, it's Matt Murdock. He's, easily the biggest pussy hound in all of the Marvel Universe. At least, certainly the most successful one. When they get back to his place, she's about to kind of put the moves on him, or he's going to kind of let her put the moves on him. But he hears a very familiar heartbeat. He smells a very familiar scent. I gotta go. I'm not feeling very well. All of a sudden, goodbye. Kirsty's like, what the hell just happened here? And he goes into his home. It's Mila. Out of the asylum, apparently sane, in Matt's bed. He knows that there's something extremely wrong with this, non-picture picture, obviously because he's blind. But, in the, the picture in the proverbial sense. And so he actually fixes her a nice cup of tea with apparently a pretty strong sedative. It knocks her out. And no choice, Matt has got to call Foggy. Because it's Matt and Foggy. I mean, it's still very much a bromance. It always will be. They will always be the couple. And, it won't be Matt and the girl. It's always Matt and Foggy. It's kind of like, those of you who watched Nip Tuck when it was on, one of my favorite shows that ultimately became just more of a guilty pleasure than anything is that, you have, the two main characters. You have, you have Sean, you have, and you have Christian. And then there's, like, the women who come between them. It's like they're the two that are actually, like, together. And, and that's very much the way that I feel about Matt and Foggy, is that despite the fact that sometimes they hate each other, they need each other. And, basically Foggy, Matt asks Foggy, if it weren't, I don't think he would have asked if it wasn't anybody but Mila. But he asks to check into how Mila would have gotten out of the hospital, because apparently she was incurably insane. This was all done by Larry Cranston, Mr. Fear, kind of during the finale of Ed Brubaker's work on, his really, really excellent work, really dark and excellent work on Daredevil. And sorry, I have to be drinking. And sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. He is, so in the meantime, he's, going to obviously put on the tights, going to go out swinging, clear his head a little bit, and focus more on the problem of this young man that Foggy has in turn told him about. So these are the favors that they are asking of each other. So there's still a give and take. And something very, very bizarre happens when he confronts one of the gang, basically the gangster who would stand to benefit the most from, the other one dying. And something very strange happens to them, and all of a sudden, in just a matter, this is even more of a life-twisting, upside-down moment in Matt's life is then, the whole father's grave, father's bones and gloves and everything like that. This is even more turning Matt's world on its head. But the way that this differs from, again, pretty much everybody that came before Mark Waid is that he still manages to, it's not kind of a relentless, just like pounding on Daredevil. It allows him to breathe, allows him to have some little bit of fun with his character. It allows us to be entertained by the book, not just for the sake of just seeing how low can we force Daredevil into like this just never-ending, abyss of, misery and unhappiness and like near insanity. But it's more of a question of how will he overcome it, as opposed to, the more morose question that we were asking during the Bendis run, during the Brubaker run, and of course during Shadowland, is how much further can we pound this character into the ground? Because at that point in time, because really, obviously for the longest time, you had, Marvel's whipping boy was Spider-Man. It's like he's the guy that just gets, he gets shit on all over the place. And then Daredevil took over that role because things kind of started to turn around for Peter Parker. So obviously, just more terrific, wonderful art by Chris Samney. Some really, really terrific writing by Waid. It's a really artfully done cliffhanger. There wasn't anything. This is not like, in my opinion, to the quality of something like Cargo of Doom, The Rocketeer, because there was nothing that came out this week that just really grabbed me and just said, no, you cannot let go. These are really terrific comic books, but they're kind of on the lower cusp of like the 5 score. As far as, I think both The Shadow and Daredevil were like 4.5 out of 5s, kind of definitely more teetering towards 5, rounding up, rather than being just flat out just like, oh man, this is perfect. This is comic book heaven. There was no book that I saw like that this week for me. So that is it. I am going to go and have lots of acetaminophen and stuff like that, and hopefully I'll feel better in the morning because I have to go to work. But I'm sorry that this is not kind of my normal kind of feisty self here tonight. But trust me when I say it's not without good reason that I'm feeling like shit. So that's it for this week's new comics, bitches. That was a little bit more energetic than I could sum up before, but no, seriously. But thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with me and my like half delirium here. Again, if it's your first time here, please go watch another one of my videos first to get a much better feel of how I actually do this stuff. And then subscribe. Of course, like it, dislike it, comment, complain, criticize. Don't really criticize because you know this is not me at the top of my game. So, but again, thank you all for watching. Oh man, I'm beyond. I wish I was drinking right now because then I would have an excuse. Well, I mean, being sick is an excuse too, but I mean, I would have a more fun excuse. But anyway, thank you again for tuning in. This is James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery, signing off, reminding you to always stay in the shadows. Ooh, scary boo.